Hey friend, Dr. Amber here, ready to talk to you about some misconceptions that people have about extroverts and introverts. So in another video, I talked to you about the four preference pairs and Myers-Briggs and what all of the four letters mean and how they work together to make up your personality type. And I want to spend a little bit more time talking about extroversion and introversion because those are the two letters that we learn about the most or that we hear people talk about the most. And I want to shed some light on some things. Some common misconceptions that we have, particularly about extroverts, is that they're always confident, which is not true. I'm an extroverted person. My Myers-Briggs type is ESFJ, so extroversion, sensing, feeling, and intuition. And the truth of the matter is, I'm not always like super hyper confident. I mean, I am a pretty confident person, but not in every single situation. I think how that has played out for me specifically is because my background is in communication, because I was a public speaking professor for so long, and I speak for a living, people assume that I want to be the center of attention all the time, which is not true. Something else that's a misconception about extroverts is that they are energized in all social situations. It's like no matter where they are or what they do, again, they want to be the star of the show, shaking hands and kissing babies, when that's not true either. Sometimes we really do like to be left alone. We like quiet. We value solitude. As a person who prefers extroversion, I really love my alone time. I'm married and I got kids. I run a business. And again, I talk for a living. I teach people how to be more effective communicators for a living. And so I also get really overstimulated sometimes. My social battery can wear out fairly quickly given the situation, even though I really enjoy the energy of interacting with other people. Both things can be true, that I like to engage with people, but I also like my peace and quiet. I like to go lay down. I like to be in here. This is my lady lounge. I like to come in here, and I designed this space to be what it is, which is like an office and also a lounge, like on my couch in here, because some days I just want to close the door and be by myself and be left alone. I need to power down. I need to be alone with my thoughts, and I can also be energized by that too. It doesn't mean that the energy is going to play out the same. Like I may not necessarily be as energized by solitude if I were an introvert. But again, my point is that just because people who prefer extroversion really value interaction and are energized by interaction, it doesn't mean that they don't know how to be alone, that they don't know how to shut up, they don't know how to stop talking. Y'all say this about extroverts, and so I'm here to on behalf of extroverts everywhere and say, like, many times we evaluate people and assess them, and even in some cases judge them. Okay, if we're telling the whole truth, based upon stereotypes of our personality types, and we don't leave room for certain things to apply specifically to each person as an individual. We use these generalizations and think that they apply to everybody, and they just don't. So the last thing that I think people get wrong about extroverts is that they're bad listeners, which I don't think that's true either. In my experience, again, people think that all extroverts want to do is just talk. That's all they want to do. Talk. Like, oh my God, here come the talkative extroverts. All they want to do is talk. They want to make small talk. And we say all these things. This is all the stuff that I've been hearing over the entirety of my life about not necessarily me as a person, but extroverts in general. And again, none of these things are hard and fast rules that apply to everyone. I like to think that I'm a really good listener. That could also be in part of the fact that I'm a communication expert. So I understand the importance and the value of listening. And it's important to me that the people in my life feel seen, heard, and valued. And that comes by me, and that comes by way of me listening and paying attention. And my very best friend is highly introverted. But I don't think that she feels like there's no space for her in our friendship only because I'm extroverted. And so I just feel like it's important for us to call out that many extroverts do care about what people have to say. And we are able and equipped to be able to listen intently and with empathy and be supportive and encouraging and engaging and all of those things. All right. So That's the first thing. Second thing is misconceptions about introverts. So these are things that we tend to get wrong about people who prefer introversion. The number one thing that I think that people get wrong about introverts is that they don't like people. Now, y'all are not beating the allegations though, because a lot of y'all be saying that. A lot of y'all will say to me like, oh, Dr. Amber, I don't like people. I don't like people. And that can be fair. That can be true about you, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's because you are introverted. I think where we get that wrong is, or why we get that wrong, is because people who prefer introversion really like to find meaning in conversation. They don't want to waste their time and breath over things that feel trivial, that waste time, that don't really make sense. So that can come off as, I don't like engaging with people, I don't like dealing with people, because they don't like to live in the shallow area of the pool. They want to wade in the deep end, or they want to just talk about things that are relevant. They tend to be really efficient in their communication in some respects, because again, they are energized by being left alone, which is fine. But that doesn't mean that you don't have the social skills or ability to be able to engage with other people, or that you just don't like people, that you're just by default antisocial. And so I really want us to think more intentionally about how we use language and talking about that, because again, being an introvert doesn't mean that you don't like people and people don't like you. Okay, so let's just be clear about that. They might prefer one-on-one interactions. They may not necessarily love being in a group setting because it drains their energy, but they might do really well in more intimate settings and having more private conversations. And you can see a completely different version of an introvert in that moment or in that environment because they're much more comfortable, which is fair. And again, that's true for all of us. Another stereotype and misconception that we have about introverts is that, again, that they lack social skills, which again is not true. My best friend she plans retreats for people. Like, she's so good with people and she's good in social settings. But I think where that stereotype comes from, and this misconception where it comes from, is introverts tend to be in their head a lot. They like to think about and process their responses. They want to be thoughtful in their responses. Again, they really value meaningful conversation. And so sometimes though, that thought process might take a little bit longer than the situation allows for. So then people who are looking for a response and they're looking to engage might misinterpret what their processing might look like. So when that happens, I feel that we have to just meet in the middle a little bit. People who, my introverts, if you're watching this, we need you to come out of the neighborhood of your brain sometimes. Like, you have to also invite us into your brain sometimes. And I know that it could be like a chaotic mess on the inside, which is also true for extroverts, but we can get lost trying to figure out, or trying to wait for you to get out what it is that you're saying and what it is that you're thinking. But in no way does it mean that they're shy, because that's really the thing. People like to say oh, I'm an introvert, I'm shy. And shyness and introversion are not congruent. They do not necessarily mean the same thing. But we ascribe to these ideas and to these notions because this is what we hear the most often about people who prefer introversion. So just because you're thoughtful and you're in your head and you're considering and you're processing because you care about what you want to say, that might come across as shyness when it's really not that at all. I know some very bold and courageous introverts who, can really call the shots and do really great with people and in social settings. Okay. So lastly, the last misconception I think that we have about introverts, and one of the things that we get wrong about them also, is that they're not good public speakers, which again is not true. I was a public speaking professor for 8 years. I have listened to, watched, and graded, evaluated, assessed over 1,000 speeches in my lifetime, even more so as a communication coach and working with executives and writing keynotes and all the things that I've done in my career. And I don't know where we got that from, that people who prefer introverts are not good public speakers. I think that they tend to be really thoughtful leaders. They tend to be super inspiring because, again, they take their time to process and think through how they want to show up, because they want to be mindful of how much they expend their energy and how much they give and receive energetically to the people and the places with whom, how they spend their time. So I absolutely know for a fact that introversion does not automatically equate to poor public speaking skills, again, shyness, or just an inability to be social and to be to not be socially awkward. Some of these things might apply. So, you know, again, we're all different people. We all show up differently in different settings, and that's okay. I just want to call out and call forward that there are some things that we get wrong about each other, and that we don't have to be opposing when it comes to our preferences, because like I was saying in a previous video about your Myers-Briggs, they literally are, it's just what you prefer. It's the one thing that you are more comfortable with. It's like using your dominant hand, as I'm left-handed, or if you're right-handed, your right hand is your more dominant hand. You can write your first name with your right hand super easily if you're right-handed, and you might struggle a little bit with your left. Doesn't mean that you're incapable. Doesn't mean that through time and practice you couldn't get better, but inherently you're going to use your right hand more because that's what you're more comfortable with. The same is true for these preference pairs. So with your extroversion and your introversion, both of them are in you. Both of them are authentic to who you are. So if you are going to a networking event or a conference or some type of gathering, you don't have to be like, oh, I gotta turn it on and pretend like I like these people. No, you don't gotta do that. You can just show up as you are, make your genuine interactions with a couple of people and be intentional about that, and go home. If you prefer extroversion, you can be mindful, you can be thoughtful, you can listen intently and engage and have your time, get your laughs, be energized, and go home. So hopefully this helps you understand a little bit more about this particular preference of extroversion and introversion. I really want you to, in a very practical way, learn how to talk a little bit more, what's the word? Not sophisticatedly, but I just want you to have more self-awareness. I want you to have more knowledge, and I'm here to share it. And so that you can have words well said for a life well lived. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys soon.